live? Is it live? Is it working live? Because I don't hear anything. Oh, I guess I do. All right. Well, hello everybody. I just can't keep my stuff separate. This is for all the new viewers. I can't keep my stuff separate. I can't make a specialized show. That's the problem. I can't do a genre too well. So this is the progressive liberal 7.0, but we're gonna have to throw in a little intro that is actually more of a relativistic skeptic subject or an illusions exist subject. But it does relate. I think you'll see that it relates because there is a subtext. A subtext, not an ulterior motive, Ken. That's not the frequency. The frequency is subtext. Oh, it's giving me an error. Well, whatever. Okay. Let's get started. Space as a fabric. Space as a fabric. I think people don't understand this idea of space as a fabric. Okay, let's think about what this means. We're talking about the connection of space, and of course, this idea is used. I mean, and that's where I'm going with this is how and why it's used. And let's just start this way. I can be in this location, and I can move to this location, right? I can be here and move to here, or the other way around, right? Over time. So let's, we're gonna do a mental exercise where we don't assume too much. We don't assume too much about space, but we know that I could be in this location. I can move to this other nearby location or a far away location given time. So time is the thing that allows me to translate. So I can, now let's say if space was totally disconnected, this piece of space is totally disconnected. They were disconnected and non-continuously connected. In that case, I couldn't get over there, right? They have to have a connection. So the connection is time. So space, I can wormhole. It's just a word for using time to teleport, using time to another location, right? So not instantaneous teleport, that's impossible. But I can transport myself from one location to another over time. That shows that they're connected because otherwise I couldn't move from one location to another location. So they're connected. Well, when two things are connected, they have a connection. They also have a separation, right? The distance between them, in this case, would be the separation. Also the separation in time because of the time translation. But let's just say the distance separation is also their connection. The space between the two is the distance, and the separation, it's also the connection, right? Now, if there's no wire or anything physical connecting the two, though I would say, anything that has physical characteristics is physical, but if there's no material substance, no mass connecting the two, they're still connected by, if they're in the atmosphere, but if they're in space, well, they're connected by space. Is that a connection? Well, yeah, a photon can travel from one to another, or the object itself can travel from one location to another. So their connection and separation is sort of the same thing, inversely proportional. The further they're separated, the less their connection, and vice versa. But there is a connection, right? And it's a two-way connection. And that's what makes space like a fabric, because a fabric is like that. This part of the fabric is connected to that part of the fabric. Okay. Now, with a distortion of space, what we're dealing with is this problem that many people have noticed, that the idea of a tractor beam, right? A tractor beam that you can put it on something and it brings the thing towards you is hard to imagine. Except, of course, you can do it with magnetism. Okay, so with a magnetic object, or even a metal object that you could induce magnetism into, and and of course gravity. Now, for some reason, it's really hard to imagine simulating gravity, even though it's been done in science fiction a lot, and it's fun to imagine it's possible. But it's hard to imagine in a scientifically realistic way, at least for me, and I think a lot of other people. So um, that's related to the idea that, well, it's hard to imagine a tractor beam. And nobody's wanted to imagine a tractor beam. I believe even Newton didn't really like that idea of gravity as some force that could reach out and tractor pull you back. The whole point of Einstein's using the fabric of space-time is that, well, we do have this fabric. We know that there's transitional, kind of, you can describe it mathematically. You can, translate yourself to anywhere in this space. But since it's a more of a fabric, is a physical metaphor, well, we can imagine a fabric doing a tractor beam. It's not a tractor beam because the fabric is the thing connecting you. So if the table or if a chair is on a rug and you pull the rug, that's not a tractor beam, but you can pull it forward towards you because it's connected to the fabric. And since space is a kind of a fabric, we have a potential solution for the tractor beam problem because space is now like a fabric. We're embedded in the fabric and we can move, but we have inertia. That's sort of the resistance to moving in the fabric. It's not a superconducting space. No, it's a fabric. And though we can travel through it, or it travels through us, it does exist. It's our coordinate system, right? And when you have mass, that mass would pull, the energy is just flying through the fabric. The mass, the energy is kinked up and it's pulled the fabric. It's a big foam. It's a big foam in 3 dimensions, but it's like the mass is where the fabric was pulled and like stapled, glue gunned in place. So around that mass, it's stretching the foam. If you get really far away, you won't notice the stretching, but if you're close enough, you'll notice this stretching, where the foam has been stretched so that it's thinner, not as dense. The outer parts that are dense, well, if you get close to the edge where that lower density is of the foam, of the elastic foam that is space, if you're at the edge of that, well, it's denser on one side and less dense on the other, so you travel towards the less dense, just like any object floating or any other sort of phenomena of relative pressures. And that's the idea that 2 things there. One, no tractor beam, right? It can be imagined. It can be hard to imagine in 3 dimensions for people, but it can be without just resorting to an arbitrarily, the word 4th dimension, because you're in this fabric and you're stretching the fabric from the inside into a little kinky ball. That's the mass. Put a staple around that or clamp, and then the rest of it is being stretched right there in that foam. So it solves the tractor beam thing because things in the foam are just working their way towards the less dense part, just like anything in a solid that over time is liquefied, where things can move around. And 2, it answers the question of how could there be infinite energy? I keep pulling these objects towards me and that's infinite potential energy. No, you've just changed the shape and now there's a downhill part, but it's not downhill, it's a pressure gradient. Easy peasy. Space is a fabric. It works out really well when space is a fabric. Now that segues right into the COVID response. And I don't want to politicize things like this because we all want to help each other, but we do have to talk about how things are handled, right? And so I want to, with the least amount of no dunking, but we can make honest criticisms. That's the limits I've put on myself. Whether anybody else agrees that I've kept to them or not or anything like that, separate issue. First of all the Republicans and Trump minimized it. Um, Republicans in my family, I knew some that aren't even Trump fans, that when I tried to talk to them about it, non-politically, how are you doing? Are you sheltering? What's going on? They're like, I just think it's being used to make Trump look bad. People are trying to blow it out of proportion. Trump said it was a hoax. Then like, no, I'm saying that the Democrats saying it's a big deal is a hoax. Well, no, it is a big deal. The Democrats said it's a big deal because it's a big deal. You should have recognized that it's a big deal. This minimizing is dangerous and probably related to why our curve is one of the worst. What excuses can you make when we're doing worse than Italy and every other country looks like in the shape of the curve? Okay. There are preparations that were ignored. I saw a lot of fact checkers debunking this accusation that Trump destroyed the pandemic teams and stuff. Well, no, they did a lot of that. And specifically in the NSC, that pandemic response chief or whatever the title was that was going to be on the National Security Council or was on the National Security Council, they tried to debunk that. Well, he didn't fire that guy. He removed that whole position and the guy went to work somewhere else. No, he removed the whole position. He destroyed that position that was at the top of the national security hierarchy. And people are like, no, 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 he just was making it more efficient. Well, I don't see examples of proving that it's more efficient. So I don't think that flies too well. Okay. You didn't pay attention to the manuals, to what people were saying, to people's warnings. People have seen a pandemic coming. Hollywood's made movies about the whole thing. We know the whole issue is coming. And what people don't seem to understand is that, yeah, we're not talking about the zombie apocalypse, the end of the human race. It's just 1% or 2. But if you do math, that's millions of people. You don't want it to be millions of people. And you also don't want what we even have now, which is the fact that we're not prepared for the SARS-2 patients. Other people are having to wait or be interfered with. If there's no mask because of COVID, that means there's no mask when somebody's getting a brain surgery from an auto accident or whatever. So this is what the government is for, right? And that brings me to the point 2C here, where socialism, I mean, basically, all of the solutions government can provide, you could say, were social solutions, were a socialism. And it seems like a lot of that people are for. A lot of my right-wing co-workers and family came rushing to me immediately that, oh, why are the Democrats blocking it? We got to give money to everybody right now. And they're talking about they don't like that the money's going to the corporations, like everything's switched around. But I just want to notice, the government comes and saves these companies time and time again, every 5 years and 10 years. So if capitalism needs somebody to rescue it and it's government, then that means government's the stronger, more reliable thing. And when government fails, it means there's nobody to go to. When capitalism fails, it means that's just normal in the richest nation that's ever existed. Oh, hey, black heavyweight. Hey. So how do you explain 250 million masks being shipped from the United States overseas on Monday to other countries? Oh, well, I explain that as I've been arguing with my, conservative uncle, that's the whole point of that Defense Protection Act. He could order them not to do that. States were reporting like a week and a half ago, I was talking to people in my family, just about some reports of people saying that the state procurement agents, the shipping clerks or whatever, of which, by the way, the United States has the executive branch alone has like 6,000 shipping clerks. So yeah, actually, I think they could help with shipping. But anyway, that they had people were reporting having lost bids to overseas, you know, buyers. I guess Saudi Arabia, and that's the thing too when they talk about like in Italy or wherever. Oh, they're limiting the ventilators to this age group or this prognosis or that. It's like, well, these guys just want it to be like the natural way, which is the rich people get the ventilators. Yeah, fuck that shit. No one complains about corporate socialism. That's right, except for Bernie, finally. Uh, so, anyway, okay. Nice talk to you. I'll talk to you again in a second. Third subject, your position and how you got there. This is what I think we're doing, right? Convincing each other, sort of pointless. It's not that that's not a part of the game. It's not even that that's not how you get, like, I don't know, your power ups, your Mario power ups from the conversation. Fine. It's fun to jostle and try to get your ideas and be strong and feel. But convincing people, it's like, I mean, think about it this way too. You totally could, people could be totally wrong, flat earth, and you're probably not going to convince them. So that just making that the goal is unrealistic, is my point. So the real goal, and what I think we're all doing, whether we know it or not, is we're telling people our position and how we got there, right? And it seems really simple, but people should consciously try to do this. What is your position and how did you get there? For one, it's more interesting. It's more interesting because B, it's less manipulative. If you're trying to manipulate me and to convince me, you're not telling me your whole position. You're telling me enough of your, well, you might tell me your whole position, but in general, what people will do is they'll tell you the minimum part of their position in a way that makes it look as good as possible to attract you to it. And then how you got there is not how they got there, it's how their idea of you. Oh, well, you like sports. Let me tell you, people who like sports like this idea. They're trying to tell, they're making a path for you. I want to know where you are, the whole thing, and how you got there. So it's more interesting, it's less manipulative, and if you really want to convince me, it's more convincing because I'm not the only one that can tell when you're trying to lead me along a little path. When you're trying to tell me what position you want me to have and how I should go there, and you aren't even over there. You're here. Who knows? Maybe this is the guy you want to, I don't know, do real estate fraud on. Whatever, random Nick Bravo comment. Okay. Now, the only danger for you, if you play this game this way, where you declare your position, and hey, how did I get there? Oh, I was thinking this and think, oh, when I was this age and I got here this way. Maybe that means I'm biased. Maybe it's because of my past damage or whatever. But just honestly, this is how I got there. Oh, I had a bad relationship. Now I don't think marriage should be a state institution. What? That's not a real example. I don't believe that. I'm just saying, you go, and whether it's people are going to disagree with you and know how you got there, maybe have some sympathy of like, oh, I'd feel that way too if I went through that, but I didn't. I went through this other stuff. So it's more interesting, less manipulative, and more convincing. And the danger for you is you get put on the spot, right? I notice people do a lot of retroactive position adjustment. For example, in the Democratic Party, I was out there protesting the Iraq War. Joe Biden was going, oh, it's a great war. It's fine. It's a great thing. We had to do it. Bad reasons, but a good thing. Bad way we're doing it, but a good idea. Whatever he was saying. And then, lo and behold, 15 years later or 10 years later, whatever, people are like, yeah, but I was against that. Retroactive position adjustment. And you see people like Trump, they set themselves up for that. It's like he says everything. Oh, they're rapists, they're probably good people. Then later he could go, I said they were good people. I was the first person ever to say they were good people. So, in other words, the danger is you're going to be caught in hypocrisy. But if you really hold your positions, that's fine. It's not hypocritical if when you get caught in the hypocrisy, you don't stick with your position. Then it's just, oh, I was made a mistake. I have grown, and now I'm not a hypocrite, but I have not retroactively adjusted my position. I have realized that my position used to be different, and my new position, I'm acknowledging that it's changed instead of just changing it and pretending that it didn't change. So you do have to admit that you change and could be wrong. Pretty much everybody these days will say, oh, yeah, I could be wrong. But they don't ever tell you a particular example. So you have to face certain examples. And it hurts. Like they say, the truth hurts. You learn the truth and go, oh, I was wrong all this time. But that's just like when you exercise and your muscles hurt. That's just your brain muscles exercising and getting stronger. And it hurts less and less as you just accept more and more truth and go, hey, I am changing. Look at that. So um, the final message here, and what relates all this stuff, the subtext, as I was saying, is that expertise is going to win the long game. Why? Because academic experts, first of all, hard scientists like physicists, and chemists, when they say something works a certain way in their expertise, um, they tell you what they think, and here's why I think that. Here's the theory, here's the expertise, the experiments that back it up. They tell you all that. But even academics in kind of a bullshit academic areas where they could say whatever, like how psychology used to be or is in certain areas, and some psychology is real scientific these days. But I don't know, history, which is super important, but obviously subjective, and the era you're in colors it. Or, I don't know, the art interpretation of basket weaving when performed underwater. In other words, just I don't know what subject you want to say, but however fluffy or whatever, when it's in academia, they still have to do this. They have to say what their position is and why they believe it. And they can use numbers, or they can use feelings, or they can use, hey, everybody just knows this, right? And all the other people in that academia area could be like, yeah, I feel the same way, it's true. But in the long run, we'd see the reason and the idea, and you can judge that. And it all comes out in the wash. And that's why in science, and about things like tractor beams, it's like at least the scientists, the dissident scientist who is a great guy, but he doesn't give scientists the freedom to just have all the speculation. And it's not clear why, because they should be able to have all of their interesting theories too. And the fact that they back it up with mathematical systems, or like with Gary, he criticizes, oh, they just made that mathematical system reverse engineered to their theory. Yeah, they did that, and then they ran it forward and it worked. Gary seems to assume that, of course, his system could also have a reverse engineered mathematics, but he's criticizing them for having one. Meanwhile, he's relying on that he assumes his could have one. So we might as well assume it already does have one. And then when we run it forward, it would also get the right answers. Well, no, not all mathematical systems when run. Some theories don't match up. They don't map to a mathematical system that runs forward. So just because you have your speculation and look at space as a fabric or whatever else, and you have a mathematical theory to describe its behavior accurately based on input measurements, and you have other scientists' theories incorporated, and that doesn't make you less reasonable. So I guarantee you, in the long run, expertise is going to win the day of all of this stuff. And the rule of the idiots, the last gasp of the idiots, we're not going to have a technocracy like you think, because a technocracy like a lot of you think, no offense to whomever it doesn't apply to, is basically a bunch of idiots using science wrongly, like just making science up, like, right, science says that women should be at home, and then that's not it. Real science with real knowledge, with citizens that understand how it actually works, what real expertise is. And I'll tell you the theme here, it's very simple to tell what real expertise is. A real expert will tell you very clearly what their position is. No, I don't know, like Jordan Peterson. I don't know, you tell me. No, real expertise. That's fine. I love having discussions. I don't know, you tell me. But real expertise, for example, in a pandemic and medical situations, or how pollution works, how the environment works, how weather, global warming, cancer, whether cigarettes cause cancer, these things, expertise, it will tell you its position, and it will say, here's how I got there. And if there's holes in the argument, you could look at it and go, well, here's the hole. And so it's all on the table, fully reviewable. And if you don't want to review it, fine, other people will, and you can review the reviewers, the review, or whatever you, or just ignore it. But expertise will win in the long run. And if a bunch of people ignore the expertise, their time is running out. How long? 1,000 years. Oh, I don't care. I'll be dead. My great grandchildren can deal with it. Yeah, a lot of people think that way, but luckily a lot of people don't. All right, cheers. Nice to see you, Black Heavyweight. I don't know if you're still here or not, but it was. We should have a hangout. Do some for real talk. All right, cheers.